Hello, everybody. I am so happy to have you with me today to talk about how to love yourself more and the reframe game. The reframe game can be used in so many different areas of our life to help us change thinking patterns that aren't beneficial to us. But a huge one is changing the thoughts in our head that are, creating lack of love for ourselves, that are criticizing ourselves, that are seeing things even around us in other people that are bringing back negative impact to us and affecting our joy and the way we get to choose to live our life, because that comes back down to loving ourselves and getting to live the extraordinary life that we all deserve and that the world deserves for us to have, because what we have to give back and share to everyone around us is so different when we learn to live in that space. And I don't know about you, but it's so easy to get sucked into negativity around us and even in conversations we have with other people that can 100% affect how we feel and how we are operating in the world and what we actually are attracting back to us, which is a huge part of it as well. So I would love for you when you join to let me know you're here so that I can shout out back at you. And I absolutely am looking forward to questions and comments, because sometimes when I or anyone, when we explain something, it makes so much sense to us. It's how we understand it. But there's a lot of different ways to get to the same, understanding. And the more clear it is, the more you can use it and implement it, which is everything that I, want to share is something that you can use. So, of course, we go back to, as always, the appreciation game, because when you practice appreciating yourself, you start to hear the negative voice. So many times, that negative voice is so insidious and constant that we don't even hear it. And so, hearing it is part of being able to use the reframe game to change the way we're thinking about it. So, if if I have a thought, and just a very ambiguous example would be, nothing ever works out for me. Everything's always going wrong. Nothing works out for me. And what happens when I'm telling myself that is, every time that something is going on, not going quite right, the first thing that's going through my head, since I now have that pattern, is nothing ever works out for me. Everything is always difficult. Everything's always a challenge. And as I tell myself that, that means that I can't see solutions that are right there, because I've already convinced myself that nothing ever works out for me. Things are not easy. And so I am creating it continuing to be difficult. So the reframe came as about slowly, gently, kindly changing that, because you can't just say to yourself, everything always works out for me, when you've been telling yourself for years, nothing ever works out for me, because you're not going to believe it. And if you don't believe it, you're not going to change how you feel about it. So you're really not changing it. So, the next step would be, you know what? I know that sometimes things do work out for me. I'm sure that sometimes things work out for me. And I am grateful that sometimes things work out for me. So, Victoria says, how do I catch a negative thought pattern? That was the first trick for me. And I noticed that when I started being really first appreciating myself, like making a daily habit of thinking of things to appreciate about myself and writing them down, because before that, so much of how I talked to myself was negative that I didn't even recognize it. But when I started appreciating things that I did right and thanking myself for showing up for myself, then I began to hear the negative, recognize it, feel it. Oh, because I had started to put something in there that was different intentionally. And then Christina says that was a tough one for me. It took me a while in order to even know exactly. And it was the same for me. And I still catch myself and realize that I was thinking something that, was ridiculous. And and I still, when that happens to me, will stop what I'm doing and have a conversation with myself, because you can't, if you just laugh it off but you don't change it, you're not really changing the pattern that you're wanting to correct. I mean, not too long ago, when I lost my voice and got sick for a few days, I realized I was thinking, well, you've been lazy the last few days. And then my brain went, what? And then I actually had a conversation with myself. Like, you have not been lazy. You've been running a fever. You've been resting. That's normal and that's a good thing to do. And as you feel better, you will get these things accomplished that you're seeing that aren't done because you weren't feeling well. And I literally actually took the time to have that conversation. And so in every area, then to change it, you have to kind of be gentle with it. Like if you're always telling yourself, nothing ever works out for me, then what you say is, I know sometimes things work out for me. I what or if you can't even go there, you say, well, what if sometimes things work out for me? You make it gentle enough that you could, what if sometimes things do work out for me? And you just keep saying that to yourself. Write it down. Make a practice that when you hear your brain say nothing ever works out for me, that you'll start to recognize it because you're making an effort, like in the morning every day. What if sometimes things are working out for me? And then when you see something working out, remind yourself, look, there's something. And you will start to, because you're telling yourself that and you're making an effort, you will recognize and see it, and then write down what worked out for you easier. Victoria says, I love this example. Sometimes showing up when you're not feeling your best is hard. It is, right? And sometimes being kinder to yourself, like thinking about hearing yourself say something that sounds terrible. Christina says, I frame it to myself like, would you say this to your best friend? Which is how I learned to even catch. Exactly. Because I would never say some of the stuff I say to myself to someone I care about. Isn't that the truth? And then the most important thing is, it's the most beautiful, kindest, amazing gift you can give to everyone around you is to start treating yourself like your best friend. And the reason why is what you have to give is becomes bigger and bigger when you start to give yourself that love. Exactly, Victoria, self-love, which is what February's been about and why we're talking about the reframe game in this sense. Because how do we love ourselves? People say love yourself, but then how do you change it? You be your own bestie. Exactly, Christine. Oh, I like BYOB. Bring your own bestie. You always have your bestie with you, right? Bring your own bestie. That's you. And the thing is that you will be a better best friend to your best friends when you love yourself. And the best friends that you will have around you will be will grow with that as well. Because when we don't believe that we are worthy of love and we hate on ourselves, we allow others to treat us that way. And we end up with friends, people that we hang out with that don't give back because we're not willing to receive. So we have people around us that are takers, which is very draining, and it doesn't allow that beautiful magic that is you to actually be there for so many wonderful people who would also give back. And that when you love people who will love you back, that love expands. Two times two is far more than four. And that's why when you love yourself and you start to treat yourself that way and you work at reframing those negative thoughts as you recognize them. So there's another aspect to that. When you have negative thoughts about other people, it has the same impact on you as when you have negative thoughts about yourself. So when you say he always does this or he never does that, or a person that you work with, they always treat me terrible. When you focus on the negative in them, you're attracting more of it to yourself and creating a space where it's very difficult to be positive and where it's hard for good things to come. And the trick to that reframe game is you might not be able to reframe. I love that, Christina. All judgment is self-judgment. And so you look for the good in other people just like you're looking for the good in yourself. When you're doing appreciation of yourself, you're looking for the good things in yourself to appreciate so you can start to love yourself more. Do the same thing with someone that you're having a challenge with. Look for the good things, write them down, especially if it's someone you encounter every day that you're having challenging times with. write down the good things and focus on the good things, because at first, when you interact with them again, it'll feel the same. It takes a bit of practice to start seeing the good in them more. And as you practice it, you're going to draw something different from them. Your interaction from them will be different, and little by little. And you want to acknowledge every time it's better, it's different, and realize what this does is give you back power, and giving yourself back power by realizing you can control much more of what's going on in relationships between you and others by focusing on the good, and believing in the good that's in them, and focusing on that part, especially in people that you have to interact with. It's a work environment, it's someone close in your family. And then if there are people that are further out, you still want to focus on the best then, and even if they need to be at more of a distance, because you don't want to be distant from them out of hate or anger, because again, you're carrying that around, and it's infecting you. It's a disease that's infecting you, and it's not infecting them. And so the more that you practice that self-love, that love, I look at self-love too as love that's coming from God, the universe, whatever higher power, whatever you call that higher power, whatever you call that love, that energy that's in the universe, you're letting that love in. So you realize those other people are loved, and you just want to let that love in any way you can for them, because of how much it positively impacts you, and what you, how you get to live every day, what you bring to the table every day. And it is so life changing. You can have so much more fun every day, fun at work, fun on phone calls, fun in situations that used to be difficult. And you can make it a game. That's why I call it the reframe game, because I'm it's a game to change the way I used to think, and the way my brain can sometimes create negative things, and look for the best in others and speak. And that doesn't mean, there may be times when as a boss you need to look at how can I help another person, but if you look at it from a helping standpoint and not a judgment standpoint, it will it will powerfully impact your impact on them, as well as your everyday life, which is so important. So I would love to know if anybody else has any questions about the reframe game. We have a brand new reframe game with a video to go with it, which we're going to drop in the comments here. So anyone that's coming to watch the video later, go look in the comments and find that reframe game. It's free. It's a PDF that you can use to help you with what I was just talking about, and there's also a video to go with it to help explain it, because the reframe game can do a lot to help you with self-love, and with changing those thoughts that really negatively impact your everyday life, and how you get to show up for yourself. So Victoria, so when we're as we reframe it, our reframing gets better. So you started out with, nothing ever works out, then we progress to, you know, what if sometimes things do work out for me? What if I could believe? What if I can look around and see? And as you start to see it, you write down when something worked out better, easier. And it can be the simplest things. Y'all, it can be like you were getting ready to, your child needed to be somewhere and you didn't know how you're going to get them there. And the perfect answer falls in. Recognize the little things, because the little things lead to the bigger things. When you start to open your eyes and see, oh, that is working out for me. Oh, because so many times something works out and we brush it off. Just the same way, when somebody compliments you, you brush it off. We brush off those solutions that come that are so magical. And that's so important, not to brush those off, but to recognize them. And then you be able to tell yourself the next day, you know what? You know what? Everything's always working out for me. You know what I learned, and when I was able to start saying that with such conviction, is when I had some things happen, terrible, seemingly terrible things. And I decided to choose to believe that everything is always working out for me. And if this seemed negative, it was because this negative needed to happen for something bigger and more positive to happen. And when I chose that, and I mean, at one point, my practice manager at that time was bawling and so worried about what was coming. And we had this conversation, and I said, you know what? This is going to work out better than we could possibly imagine. We are going to end up with an amazing team. And we did. We did. In like 10 days' time, we had this some amazing new team members that we never would have gotten without what happened, transpired, that felt so negative. And it happened so fast. And I think it happened so, I know it happened so fast because we chose to believe it. Because I know how slow it happened when I wasn't believing it and when I was slogging along, feeling like nothing was working out for me. And I was telling myself that because I've lived both ways. And I know what happens in each circumstance. That's why it's so much easier for me to tell myself the new story and then watch it unfold in the most magical ways. Christina said, a lot of times I haven't been able to see that things worked out for me until after the fact, but it's definitely true. And even after the fact, you want to recognize it and tell yourself because you'll start believing it ahead of time, which lets it unfold faster because it goes back to the other thing, which is you can only receive as big as you believe. That's why when we tell ourselves that it's always hard, then it is hard. And the more we tell ourselves the story of how hard everything is and how difficult it is, then it continues to unfold like that. And we don't even realize we're telling ourselves those stories. But when we start every day, and I highly recommend, you must make time for yourself every day in the morning, first thing. I don't care if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but it's got to be about positive. It's got to be about appreciation. It's got to be about telling yourself positive things. If at all possible, fit in a little bit of meditation. 5 minutes. I saw somewhere where you could do a 3 minute meditation, and there's actually a book about that by Dina Proctor. Wrote a book about 3 minute meditation. If that's all you can stop your brain, because you're trying to stop that chatter long enough to hear positive, to feel, to start connecting to God, universe, source energy. Because we don't connect when we're in the pit and when we're continually telling ourselves negative things. Because He can love us, that love is pouring in, but we're not letting it in. We're shutting it out with our negative viewpoint, with our overwhelmment, with feeling like a victim. And it's so important to change that story. That's why when you start to say kind things to yourself, when you start to appreciate yourself, you start to take your power back, your power to choose. Because, in all honesty, if you're angry, you chose to be angry. If you're sad, you chose to be sad. And that doesn't mean that our feelings aren't real, but it does mean that sometimes we're staying in a place that could be just a launching pad, that we can choose to think differently by looking for more positive aspects in every aspect. And I could talk about this for hours, absolutely hours, because it's changed my life. Christina says, I made a music playlist for higher vibration, positive affirmations for my, yay! Music helps me a lot. And a lot of times during the day, I feel like if I have the TV on, it's okay to watch TV sometimes and to choose. Just be cognizant of what you're choosing and how it makes you feel, because everything matters. But sometimes I find it's just a distraction that's not necessarily negative, but it's not positive. It's not taking me in a positive direction. And I'll put on music that I feel positive about, and it even just, I'm dancing through the house. I'm doing chores with ease. I'm getting to my next project easily because I feel so good, because the music helps me stay in that space as well. And it doesn't matter what the words are or what the song's about. If it makes you feel good, that's all it has to be. Doesn't have to be any certain thing. If it makes you feel good, it can be rap if that's what makes you dance. It can be whatever makes you feel good inside. Because how you feel makes so much difference in what comes to you and your ability to see the positive. And so it matters. It matters how you feel. Every day, all the time, it matters how you feel. And that is something we can definitely talk more about. And I know that we've had a request in the past for receiving, so we're definitely going to talk about that too. Christina says, I realized this recently too. My boyfriend watches a lot of action drama stuff, and I realized how much it negatively impacts my mood if I watch it too. Man, I'm in the same boat with that. Yes. Yes, Christina. Yeah, and if you're in a small space and you can't go someplace different, you do have to reframe how you interact it, and you may have to put music in your ears or do something. If you feel yourself feeling negatively, you got to go do something else. And if it affects your dreams, that's really important because your dreams have an effect on your day the next day. So for me, a lot of drama and action and scary type movies have a negative impact on my dreams and then on how I feel then, how I feel when I sleep, what I wake up to the next morning. So I have made a conscious decision to take those things out. And it, when you're living in a small space, you can have to be creative about how you figure that out. Or maybe he could put earbuds in sometimes so that it's not always you with the earbuds. I'm sure there's different ways to figure that out. I don't watch the news either, Christina, for the exact same reason. Yes, it is all about feeling good and what you bring in, and it's fantastic. And we tend to think that we just have to watch everything and we have to be up to date on everything, even if it makes us feel bad. And we don't, because we also can trust that the universe, God, the higher power is so much bigger than we give him credit for, and everything's going to be all right. But the more of us that connect more of the time, the more of us that feel good and stay in our power and are loving to others, which is what connection is about, the faster it gets better. And the slower it gets better, the more people that are operating disconnected and hurting and angry and believing that everything is terrible. And so it doesn't serve you at all, nor does it serve anyone around you, for you to believe that the world is falling apart and the country's falling apart and you got to trust bigger than that. You got to believe bigger than that. And this country is worth it and the world is worth it. So I love you guys so much. I can't wait for our next live next week. We will have a whole new set of things to work on for to enjoy and talk about and participate in March. And so I can't wait to see you. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I look so forward to seeing you again next week. Have a fantastic day and a fantastic week. Thank you so much. And go ahead and download that free Reframe game. Love you guys.